Good afternoon and welcome to Discernment Radio. I'm your host, Danielle Pailly. We are Discernment Radio, people and topics to enhance your life. And usually I'm joined by co-host Cindy Wiedenauer, but she is out of the studio this week and she will return as soon as she's back from her travels. Today I'm joined by Laura Mayer. Laura is an integrative therapist and healing activator and the author of Unlocking the Invisible Child. This is part 2 of our 3-part series on energy and the sixth sense. Laura, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you for inviting me. It's an honor to be on your podcast.
It's so excited to have you. I'm sorry Cindy couldn't join us today on her adventures, but I'm looking forward to our conversation. To jumpstart this discussion, can you explain to listeners what it means to be an integrative therapist and a healing activator?
Yes, I would love to. What I do is I work with both sides of my knowledge. Okay, I was a clinician. I was a practitioner for 25 years as an occupational therapist. So I have that science clinical background, and I'm an intuitive. So that's the integrative therapist. I integrate all parts of me. The healing activator is quite intentional because I believe that I activate someone's healing process. Mm-hmm. I'm not doing the healing. I want my clients, I want people to understand that they have to say yes to the healing process of themselves. They get to do that. I get to spark them. I get to, initiate those pieces so they feel really excited about healing themselves. So it's a very intentional word. I want to just activate you. You're doing the healing.
And I noticed that common theme. We have a lot of people on the show who do energy work or some type of healing work, and they never say, I am a healer. They always say, I show the path, or I clear the energy, or I set up the space for you to do the work yourself. And I like that. I really like that word activator because it's very energizing and empowering.
Absolutely. And it's, to me, it was act. Are you ready to act on it? I think it's a great message.
Yeah, definitely. Now to get where you are today, you went through some pretty intense physical and emotional hurdles from a very early age. Can you talk a little bit more about your past and how it inspires your work today?
Yes, it is definitely why I'm on the path today. So as I said, I was a clinician for 25 years, but I also was diagnosed with a progressive degenerative neurological disease when I was 15. So I experienced all of this stress, inadequacy. I did very, very well as a professional, but on a personal level, I always felt like I was never going to be enough. And after 25 years of working in the field and 18 surgeries, my hand surgeon basically said, you have to stop working, which was devastating to me because I was good at what I did, even though it was hard physically and emotionally to feel so inadequate physically. And so I had to step away. And because of that, I stepped in. It's just sort of like these breadcrumbs. I didn't step in. The breadcrumbs were lined up for me in retrospect, and I followed them. So I ended up studying Kabbalistic work. I ended up getting deep into meditation. So the whole spiritual path opened to me, and then the metaphysical path. As I did this, new engagement was something I never knew anything about. I was not spirit. I didn't even know what that meant. Mm-hmm. I was really a clinician. I started to see. I started to become the intuitive. I started to heal my body. And I know that it wasn't the physicality. In retrospect, it's not the physicality. When I healed my heart, I was able to heal the physical ramifications of that soul pain. So this inspired me, of course, okay? And I knew I had to bring it to others. Yeah. And I didn't, I continue this journey every day of my life. And I want people to hear that. I have done tremendous healing physically, and yet I'm so aware now of different components of this core aspect that I never even dealt with or got so deep with. And as I keep going and going and going and going deeper and understanding, you talked about the emotional and the traumas, back to conception, back to, in utero, the more I understand that, the greater my healing is. So it's such a lifelong process. And, I'm fascinated by it because I see the results. So it's an ongoing process. And I'm even 10 years ago, I wouldn't have known the level of trauma that existed within my soul, okay, my beingness. So the beauty for me is that it doesn't end. It's an ongoing, amazing process of just resolution, and it's a good thing.
Yeah, I want to draw attention to 3 really important points that you made. Number one, you were diagnosed when you were 15. Now, 15-year-olds and teenagers in general are already hormonal and going through self-doubt and so many changes. So it's pretty rough being a teenager as it is. But to have that physical disease and being told that you're going to get worse, and the fact that you took a path out of not getting worse, but of getting better. And I like the second thing you said about it's a process. So it's not a once and done. You meditate once, you heal once, and then you're done your work on this earth. You're always evolving and growing. And the third awesome point that you made was you're talking about how you don't realize you have trauma. And so many people walk around, I think, with stress, and they don't realize because, like a fish in water doesn't know that it's in water. And so when you're out of water that it knows. If you're in that mess, you don't even realize that you're feeling it until you get relief. So really good points that you brought up.
Absolutely. I also want to add that, it was incredibly difficult as a kid. Yeah. Because I didn't know what was going to happen to me. And this is very, very important. And I did not have the encouragement from my parents, okay, or my family. And that to me is critical. And in the work I do, I really look deeply into the family work, into the families, okay? Because I felt damaged. I felt like damaged merchandise, and not knowing, am I going to be in a wheelchair at 25? Am I going to be dead at 40, which is what I was told? What's happening in my life? So the piece in retrospect is that I totally and absolutely became my story. I mean, everything about me wrapped itself around my story. I mean, it had to. It was my hands. So it was really hard to function. So I couldn't hide it. But I did hide it in a lot of ways. And that was the most devastating piece. And it's the becoming the story. Now, clinically, as a professional, I did great, which I don't even get, okay? But somehow or other, I was able to show up there and never feel damaged. Yeah. But in my emotional, psychological, which is where the traumas come from, okay, that's the basis of trauma, the emotionality, the soul pain, okay, the heart pain. Very, very difficult. I also want to just say something because I want people to hear this very clearly. It took me till I was 50. It took me 40 years to recognize that I even had a choice. Yeah. To step away and own something different. I didn't get this in my 20s or 30s. Now, of course, nobody talked about it back then, all right? But that was significant. And it wasn't until I said yes.
Yeah, I'm so glad you didn't listen to the people who said, dead at 40. And an environment is so critical, not just, physically where you are, but the people who surround you and whether they encourage you or don't encourage you, and I'm hoping that at some point you did get encouragement from people because it makes sense that you'd be purposeful and productive at work, but on the personal realm, because you didn't have that support, to have to figure out how to lift yourself up.
Yeah, interestingly enough, the doctors were incredibly supportive. Some of them were. I had wonderful people come into my life when I applied to college, and it was an occupational therapy program. And this is significant, which is why I'm bringing it up. It was an occupational therapy program at NYU.
Yay, NYU.
Yeah, the interviewer literally, Tony said to me after asking me about my hands and my disease, he said something so profound to me. And these are the people who lift you up. These are the angels that come into your life that you don't even know at the time, right? Unless I didn't know because I wasn't involved in that level of knowing at that point. And he said to me something so poignant that's stuff I grasped. And that's cute, grasp, no pun intended. And he said to me, you can make this an asset or a liability, your choice.
Wow.
That was a huge thing for a woman at 20 to hear, because my parents would say to me, don't tell anybody, hide. Don't ever let anybody know. So he gave me that opening to be okay, to make my disease an asset. And you know what? I did.
What
and
awesome
those
advice.
Are the pieces that are so encouraging and lift you up. So yes, I was blessed with some of those people that have carried me as I've been able to carry myself.
I think that's a great takeaway for anybody who's going through something. You can look at an obstacle as an asset or a liability. What do you choose? So that's a great little nugget of wisdom, and I'm glad that somebody was there for you to share that. So now when you work with clients, what kind of stuff do you work on most? Can you walk me through an example of when someone would come to you, what do they ask you to do for them?
That's a great way of asking. What do they ask me to do for them? People come to me. A lot of people come to me because they're at the end of the road, right? Sort of like my story. And they want to know who they are. They want to know, why do I feel so awful about me? Why is it never about me? Why do I play so small? Why am I so insignificant? I feel invisible. My book is, called The Invisible Child. So people come to me saying, why am I invisible? There's such a deep soul pain of not being heard and seen. And so, which is great. They're at that place of they really want a change in their life. Now they could be 21, they could be 85. I get people, at either end of the continuum. So what I do core work. I go in with them and we use the energy. We use what I call the knowing field, the energetics that just are there around you and guide you. And we find out where that original place was. When did this happen? When did you feel so inadequate? What happened? And we go through a discovery and we go through this discovery process of, wow, this is how I felt at 2. This is how I felt, at 4. This is how my mother treated me in utero. And it is such an awakening because I don't know why I'm losing my voice. What it does is it allows the person to recognize that they didn't do anything. It's not the 4-year-old who says, oh my gosh, what did I do to cause the divorce? Or why does mommy hate me, right? It really brings such a freedom and opening to this was there before I came in.
Yeah, I gotta ask, do people actually have in utero memories? Because I'm pretty sure my first memory was maybe 2 or 3 years old, but that's about as far back as I could go.
No, they do not. No, absolutely not. But I see it. Okay, that's where my seeing intuitive skills come in. I can see it, and what I do ask my clients, what I do ask my clients is to ask their mothers. Okay, where were you? Was I wanted? Was I planned? Yeah. How are you feeling? What was going on in your life? To get a temperature reading, of what was going on with them.
That makes perfect sense because there are scientific studies that have shown that if your mom was, say, really stressed out and then she was stressed out as she carried you, that it actually changes your genetic expression to be more prone to be a stressed out person, which I find wild. So what you're saying has scientific validity as well.
Absolutely, and that's what I do. Okay, that's where I bridge the science. And I do, well, I don't do it, but I look at the energetic inheritance. All right. And in some ways, the metaphysical approach to it and the epigenetic approach to it is the same.
Mhm.
And it's not just the mother, it's the father. So you're taking in both of their core belief systems. All right. And there's another word for it called miasms. All right. It's the energetic inheritance that's in us. And so I go to that place
Mhm.
and tap in. And what's amazing to me, and I always live in awe in this process because I live in awe in the fact that I healed the way I have. I mean, who would have thought, right?
Yeah.
So I bring that passion to my clients, and it's like, wow, this is what happened then, and they say, this is exactly what's been going on my whole life with her or him. So once we go there, there's such an understanding. And to me, healing happens because our awareness heightens, period. It's not about changing what happens, although I do a reconfiguration of all of that. Literally, you sit in that place.
Mhm.
And I just did it with me recently when I had such a recognition of the traumatic event that happened in utero. All right, the PTSD I carried my whole life. I didn't even call it that,
Yeah.
okay, until recently. So when we go there, there's a level of allowance, a level of understanding. And, we can talk about forgiveness. And then for me, there's something even deeper, which is, wow, I understand. And I appreciate, not in that I condone, but I appreciate because if this is where she or he was, how could anything be different? You don't ask somebody with a physical ramification to do something they physically can't. We're talking about the same level of disability, the same level of handicap emotionally, spiritually. So it's a freedom in some ways for the person to not be so enwrapped, engaged in this is what happened to me, this is my trauma, but rather, wow, I understand where the trauma comes from. And now I'm going to free myself from it. So that's what I do. I also want to make it very clear, Danielle, because I know that my work is very heavy and very deep. Actually, it's very light and very deep at the same time. Because I believe you have to lighten up, okay, in order to do this work. You have to have a sense of curiosity and real belief that you can change your life course in your emotionality. All right, that's a given. But when clients come to me, I know exactly where they are. I take them from where they are, and I lift them up at the speed they want to be lifted up. Because that's critical. We can't do anything until we're ready to do it. So there's no agenda. There's no this has to happen or your healing has to be done in 2 weeks, 6 months, whatever. It's let's go, we're going to go with you. And it brings a level of excitement to it or curiosity. It's really been, I've watched over the years that I've done this helpful. Because then clients feel, wow, it is your show, clients. It's your show. It's all about you. Because most of the time it's never been about them, right? Yeah. So, that's the experience. But that's the work I do because that's the work I did for me. And what I always say to my clients is that I will show up for you the way I show up for me. And I know that if we give our heart and soul to the places that need attention and we love ourselves just enough to get on the path, to know that you can fix it, you can make it better, you can fix the patterns. It's not just fixing you. You got to really fix the pattern that you've been carrying since conception. And it's doable. I know it's doable. I healed after 40 years. I mean, I'm on a healing path after 40 years. I don't want to say I healed because healing is an everyday event. So it's a wonderful opportunity to jump in and become you instead of carrying all the history with you, the energetics. And you're right. That is what we can do today. We don't change the genetic code, but we change the expression of how the genetics show up. And that's amazing. Nobody told us that 20 years ago.
Yeah. And I really like when you're talking about, not just forgiving and saying, I forgive you, but understanding they were doing, and a lot of times people don't set out to do bad things. Some people do, but most people, they think they're doing a good thing and they don't realize how it's affecting somebody. So to be able to understand that they were doing the best that they could do with their own trauma and stuff, and to be able to forgive and understand is really critical. And I like that there's no agenda, that people, you give them what they're ready for at that moment, and not forcing them to do anything. Now,
yeah. It's about holding the space. It's about, because of my own story, okay, because I actually could turn this disease around. I mean, that is beyond for me. I mean, I never, ever in a million years would have thought that I would be who I am today at 64 with the death sentence that I received at 15 and at 22. All right. So, wow, this is this is why I'm showing up and bringing it to others. Nobody can tell me that this doesn't work. You can't tell me this doesn't work. I am proof it works. And there are many people out there. The fact that I was so young and it became my story is the piece that has to be reprogrammed. All right. It wasn't I got sick, 2 years ago and it shifted, but this was my life. And the other piece is I believe I called it in, not Laura, the personality, but my soul called it in, because if we're going to talk about energy and spiritual pieces, metaphysical, there's no question my soul meant to be here. This lifetime, this way. My personality, my character had to raise up to the level of what my soul expectations. I've never said that before. And that's been the process of my life. So now that there's a harmony, or pretty close to harmony with that, I'm doing my soul work, not my personality work. Does that make sense? That was something that just came to me recently. And that was a wonderful understanding that we have our soul and we have a personality, and when we're aligned, then we really push forward and have the willingness and the excitement to keep moving forward. It is our purpose here.
Yeah.
So it's hard not to want to bring it out there,
Yeah. And this leads into my next question. Now, I saw something on your website called Soul Memory Discovery, and I find that very intriguing. Can you tell us what that is?
Absolutely. So what it is, it's a process, tools, techniques that open up the healing, open up the space for your cellular memory and soul memory. We go back into different lifetimes, not to do a whole lifetime piece, which can be done. I mean, I pick and choose the different areas that I use today. But what it does is instantly come through with the bleed through of what you carry from past lives. And I actually decided to study it because I was already seeing the child in the adult. And I thought, I wonder what the past lives were. So it never fails that whatever we're working on today is the residual of what we didn't work on in the past. And it's called a bleed through. It doesn't take us over, but it's there. And so, there's many, many different pieces to it. It goes very, very deep into very esoteric pieces. I today really just pick and choose. But the whole idea of soul memory is to get into the cellular memory and the different soul, the soul memory of lifetimes, to figure out what's holding you back, where the struggles are, and to release them. Yeah, so it's very interesting.
Are there times where a trauma is only from this life, or do you think there's always a causal from a past life memory?
So I would say that, yes, we bring it forward. Mm-hmm. I think that we, if we're going to believe metaphysics, this is a piece that I've talked about for 5 years now. We can't pick and choose what to believe, right? We're either in it or we're not. And so I do believe in past lives at this point. It's hard not to, because I can see how past lives do have the bleed through. So I think what happens, my take on it is that we come in with this proclivity. We come in with the energetic inheritance of our past lives, miasms. And we probably get a few more to
Yeah.
complicate it, okay? So that now we're here in this lifetime with past life bleed through, current issues, traumas, PTSD that are pretty relevant to what the bleed through was, and now we have our discovery work to do. It would be hard for me today to say we don't have past life bleed through. No, we do. I think we come in with whatever piece really needs to be worked on. You know, for my own story, I heard once that I was a crippled, and I never use the word crippled, right? Crippled child in 6 lifetimes. And
Wow.
each lifetime I died by the age of 10. And this is my lifetime to heal it. And this is when I first started metaphysical work, and I'm like, all right, I'll believe that. Like, I wanted to believe that, to believe this was a lifetime to actually work through the issue of why do I leave? And so, does it make sense? I think so, considering I came in with this profound disease, right?
Yeah.
So I look at it with curiosity, and I look at it with the pieces that you can hold that help you, that encourage you to do the work necessary in this lifetime to be the best person you could be. So I don't, say, oh my gosh, this is it. I look at everything as where's the curiosity to make you not work, but, do the path strong and with consistency and with excitement.
And your work really blends intuition and science. So were I think I know the answer to this, because I was going to ask, were you always intuitive? But it sounded like it was around 15 that at least your intuition became known. Can you talk a little bit about that? And do you combine some more mainstream techniques in your process?
I would say my intuition didn't become known to me until I stepped into the metaphysical path. Now, that doesn't mean that I wasn't intuitive. I was always deep. And people would tease me and say, you're a psychic, that psychic kind of stuff, even in high school. But did I know that? Absolutely not. I grew up in a medical world. I grew up, it's going to be a clinician. That's all I knew. I never even thought about that.
It's obvious that you were, but it's like when it kind of became to fruition.
No, at 51. Seriously, when I started to see. Okay.
When I thought you were going to say 15. So you're saying it hit you much later.
Absolutely. In retrospect, I see where I was guided, and I took the guided path. That's the piece that I love. It's like, wow, how did you end up in the field of OT when your hands were so damaged? Well, this is how. I was so guided all along, but I never knew that. The fact that I said at 9 years old I want to be in the hospital, I mean, obviously there was something going on in there, but Laura, the personality, did not recognize it. But my soul pushed it through. That's the piece about the soul and the personality. So do I use, so the blending, all right, is I truly believe, absolutely, because I see it in my own body, the epigenetic piece. When I'm in super stress, my hands get worse. There's no question. My hands are the barometer for my stress. My stress is the DNA, right? It's the code. So when I'm not in stress, the expression of my physicality is so much more at ease. So I truly believe in it's the stress factor, and that's the physical, that's the chemical reaction of our DNA. I know that through our well-being and our nurturing ourselves that we can change that pattern. So I do breath work because of the whole trauma, the whole idea of fight flight. That's what most people are in. If you've had a trauma, then you're living in trauma. You're living in that level of stress and anxiety. So I really don't. It's really hard for me to answer that. I'm thinking about what I bring in as somebody who did clinical work for so many years. I do bring in that knowing and knowledge, in terms of, I worked in psychiatry for 15 years, so I have all of that. Object relations theory, what happens when, I'm a developmental therapist, so I get all of that. So I think I just blend it. It all comes together.
Yeah.
It just all comes together in a flow that is actually really lovely. I mean, I call it a no-brainer. There's no work to it. It just flows together. And because of that, I believe I had to do that journey.
Yeah. What I really like is when you said, 51, when you actually discovered and embraced that intuition, because people seem to think you get so far in life and this is just the way it is and there's nothing that I can do. But people can change at any point during their lives when they're ready to make that commitment. And I also, just for people listening who might not be familiar with epigenetics, we might be genetically predisposed to have something, but whether it expresses, whether you get cancer, whether you get a disease, whether something's present is a lot determined by our thoughts and our actions. So just for people who might not be familiar with epigenetics.
And I just want to say one more thing about the epigenetics. There's also this continuum. So I notice it. All right. Well, my mother recently died and I was in an environment which was incredibly stressful. And I started dropping things again. So it's not that, the expression has shifted. And a physician said this to me, the neurologist who at 15 was at bedside with me hearing that I'm going to be this is a death wish. Okay. This is a death sentence. So, wow, not a death wish. And he said to me, you're all about epigenetics. And the piece that I want to just add is that it will wax and wane as you do.
Yeah.
It will shift as you do. So that's why we have to have a barometer of our stress. Not, wow, I'm having a bad day today, but the level of stress that's taking its toll on ourselves. That's the level of stress recognition. And it changes. So we get to change. We're the change agent in that change. And that's what you're saying. We are the change agent in how the cells show up, how they're expressed, how the disease, disorder, whatever, or just, the level of discontent. It doesn't have to be a disease or a disorder. It's how angry are you today and why? And what do you think that's doing on your cellular makeup?
Yeah. And I've heard that in epigenetics that it happens so fast. I mean, things can happen in seconds. Something expresses on or off. So, it's kind of getting back to that. It's not once and done. This is a process and constantly monitoring and checking in. And I know stress supposedly is responsible for 90% of, in some way related to 90% of different illnesses. So that's a great barometer for you if you're noticing, okay, I can't close my hand right today. What am I stressing over?
It's absolutely beautiful, because I somehow or other, God, the universe wanted it to be so obvious for me. Okay. It's not internal. Like, okay, I got it, so it's like, boom, I got it. You know what I saw when you were talking about the turning on and off? I saw one of these bars that you slide, right? Like from on off.
Yeah.
It's like, that's what it is. And we get to hold that and slide the bar. And that's the piece that I want people to hear. We are the choice makers, the change makers. We really are. And the encouragement is that people care enough about themselves to be that and not continue to allow the outside tell them who they are, but to actually do the discovery and become who they really are. That's the engagement. That's the work. That's the excitement.
So what I noticed, the common thread among people we talk to who are energy workers, spiritual guides, ministers, coaches, is they all seem to have an origin story where they've come through trauma in their life and they used it in some way to transform the experience for themselves and for others. Do you believe that everyone experiences trauma, or that those who do are more inclined to want to share their pathway to well-being with others?
I do believe that everybody experiences trauma on one level or another. Again, there's layers and layers and layers. I believe that it's the person who has that soul direction that knows they have to bring it out there. There are a lot of people who heal, who have traumas that stay in their trauma. Okay. I don't want to say they don't want to get out of it. They don't know how, and they're choosing to stay stuck, so they don't. Then there are the people who can work through some of their illnesses or their traumas or whatever, PTSD, and they're fine staying where they are. I think it's the piece of the soul purpose. It's a drive that's so innate. You can't say no. Like, I know for me personally, it's like I felt a push on my back. Like, you're doing it whether you like it or not, girl. It's that kind of, it's what you come in to do. So whether or not we have more, we have a trauma that we've got to deal with. Therefore, we then turn it into the gift to others. All right. I think that's absolutely the journey. That's the healer's journey, right? That's the warrior in you. It's hard to say that everybody, I don't ever put anything into an everybody category. But I think it's hard to have when you have the awareness around the traumas and you're willing to do the work, you can only bring it forward. And that's grace to me. That's just what you're guided to do. I don't think you really have a choice. So that would be a great question for everybody. I think about, I do believe everybody has trauma. I think some people dwell in it and some people will do everything they can, and there's that whole continuum in between. But I'm wondering if that's a beautiful question to ask people is your trauma, are you meant in this lifetime to see that, to work through it, to fix it, to heal it, whatever terminology you want?
Yeah.
Because if you are, what is it that your soul, your life purpose is? It would give you such a direction. It'd be a lovely question.
And that's a good question for people to ask themselves. This leads to my last and final question for you. For people who are listening or like, sign me up, we are going to give them information on how to get in touch with you. But can you share like one or two nuggets that people can take from this interview today that they can put into their lives that you've done that have helped you, that can help others with their healing process, whatever they're going through?
Yes. And the first and foremost is to be open. To be open, to be willing to explore even the places that you're clueless about. Just open your mind, open your heart, be curious. I have this piece about, you can be deep and heavy, or you can be light and deep. Light and deep, sense of humor, sense of curiosity is magnificent. So open up your heart, open up your mind, just to the possibilities that are out there. The second one would be to really, really love yourself just enough. You don't have to love yourself completely. Just a little bit.
Yeah.
Just a little bit. Because you want to live the life you choose to live. You make a decision. I believe in myself enough. I'm going to just love me just enough to say this is what I want and I'm going to go for it. And that's such my hand is on my heart. It's such a soul piece for you. The other thing is we must move past our story. That doesn't mean we belittle it. That doesn't mean we say it doesn't matter. Of course it matters. But we understand why our story matters. We go into it, we go to the core of it, and we give ourselves the gift. Give yourself the gift of understanding it so that you can transcend it. Because you can. And that doesn't mean it goes away forever. You're always going to be pinged, and that's fine. But the pinging or the those little what's going on right now, you'll say yes with awareness and not know it's too painful. So it's the being open, it's the willingness to love yourself, And it's the willingness to give yourself well, I just said forgiving, and that's not what I wanted to say. I wanted to say give yourself the gift of moving past, doing the discoveries that help you to get past the story, the trauma, the PTSD. Because we all can if we say yes. And that will change the inheritance that we didn't have a choice. Now we do. Now we do.
Oh, you've given us some great takeaways. Thank you so much for that. Before we wrap up, can you tell people, how can people find you, to hire you, to find out more about your services?
Yes. Now, I have a very, very long website. So I'm going to tell you can look up Laura Mayer, okay, Mayer, and it will pop up. But my website is Doorway, all right, to TONAN, audacious life.com.
I love it.
IOUS. Yeah, I'm sorry. But if you look up Laura Mayer, you'll find me. I'm also on Facebook. You can find me on Facebook under Laura Mayer, and you can PM me, and I will give you all the details.
We'll make sure we put it in the show description, the direct link. Steve, but tell me, because I love the title, tell me the website again.
It's Doorways to an Audacious Life.
I love that.
Somebody said to me, you're all about audacity and all about solution. And I realized, what are you talking about, audacity? And I realized, you know what? It was making those audacious attitude adjustments one day at a time, my whole life. Otherwise, I would have, I wouldn't be here. So there's something about that excitement of being audacious, strong and brave and willing. But my work is really about the opening doorways, opening your doorway to infinite possibilities. We all have so many amazing possibilities if we just say yes. And the whole piece really, Danielle, is say yes. Just say yes to you. Just say yes to you. And doorways will open. I believe that. I trust that.
Laura Mayer, thank you so much for joining us today. It was really great speaking with you.
Thank you. It was really a pleasure. Really, really enjoyed it.
Thank you for listening to Discernment Radio. If you like the show, please click to follow.